Identical twins of Reddit. What's the most awkward thing that has happened to you because someone thought you were your sibling? In high school, one of my twin brother's teachers said hello to me and tried to grab my arm to speak to me about something class related. I didn't know who it was as I had never taken her class and walked off pretty quickly and kind of weirded out. Later, she berated my brother in class in front of everyone for being so rude to her. He told her it was probably his twin brother, and she didn't believe him. Everyone else in the class told her that he did have a twin brother to corroborate his claim, but she refused to believe any of them. Story 2. I am an identical twin. And one time I slept over at her house, and there was only one bed, so her husband let me sleep in the bed with my twin, and he took the couch. The next morning, he heard the shower go on and thought I had gone in there. It was my twin. Then he climbed in bed behind me and put his arm around my waist. He softly said, "Hey," in my ear, and I turned and looked at him and said, "Hey baby, looking for a little variety?" As a joke. He leapt out of bed and said, "If I were looking for a variety, do you think I would choose you?" It was awesome. Story 3. So my twin and I went to separate schools in 7th grade. Midway through the year, I transferred over to my twin school. The day before I started, my twin fell down in science class and hit their head and ended up going home. I start school the next day. Same science teacher. I go to the front of the class cause I'm new and I introduce myself. The teacher's eyes got really wide. He starts freaking out and telling me that I'm Ash, my twin's name. Moral of the story, my twin told no one at their school that they had an identical twin. The teacher thought I was Ash with a head injury. Edit. Well, I didn't think this would get so much attention. So, comments I've seen asked few times and replied to them, but thought I would add it up here. We went to separate schools because I got into a private school that let people in by lottery, and my twin did not. I didn't introduce myself to the class, I just went up to the teacher. It was lab day, and I had no idea where to sit. Also, it's been pointed out that isn't a moral of the story moment. Noted, and thank you. Story 4. Me and my twin, being young and dumb, decided to switch classes at school one day. We were in year 2. About 15 minutes into class, we both realized that since this wasn't our class, we could act up a bit, because the other would be punished, not us, which resulted in us both getting lunchtime detention and the awkward conversation with our teachers about why we were acting up. Edit. I got reminded of a few stories. Back when we were 16, we were at a youth event, which just so happened to have a wrestling ring. Somehow, throughout the night, we'd each been separately convinced to participate. There were bets amongst the leaders over who would win. Unsurprisingly, ended in a tie, and it was really boring to watch. While on another youth event, we went to a local water park. At the time, me and my brother were going to different high schools, so we both had friends neither of us knew. This is important because this youth event brought together a lot of different groups. So here's a short list of things that happened. My brother got crash tackled from behind by my friend Luke, who he'd never met. I pretended to be my brother with his friends that knew us both. One of them caught on and helped. We somehow managed to be in the wave pool and no one realized we were both there. I got a drink splashed in my face because his ex thought I was him. Story 5. Ooh, I actually have one for once. I am an identical twin. This is a case of someone assuming my twin was me though. For some background, I used to work at a place with an extremely tight-knit, friendly work culture. It was not unusual to have folks go out for drinks after work and have 20 or 30 people show up. Anyway, one day one of my coworkers pulled me aside and asked, "Hey, I just wanted to check, but is everything okay with you and Carrie?" Carrie is the woman I had just gotten married to at the time and am still happily married to now. I answered, "Yeah, as far as I know. What are you talking about?" They answered, "Don't bullcrap me. A bunch of us saw you last night." I replied, "What on earth are you talking about? All we did last night is stay in and drink beer and watch Netflix. We saw you with your arm around that blonde lady at the Fox and Hound last night. If you're going to cheat, why on earth would you do it there?" After a little bit of back and forth, it became clear that a large contingent of my coworkers had seen my identical twin macking it with some woman at the bar. That was our most common hangout. I had to get my brother out with all of them once just to convince them that I actually had a twin. From then on, I made an effort to mention that I had a twin around new coworkers, just so that, at the very least, they wouldn't just assume I was an a-hole if I didn't acknowledge them when out on the town. Story 6. Brother and I worked together for about 4 years in retail. We would often get scheduled wrong and got so many "you were in 2 places at once" comments. Most awkward thing I can recall that happened was I got yelled at by a customer. I ran register and he ran the floor for something my brother did. The customer laid into me and I watched my brother appear from around a corner and he came by and asked the customer to lay off me and he'd help her. The customer profusely apologized before following him. All in all, working with my twin was a lot of fun. Story 7. My dad is a twin and he always tells a story of when he was in school and he shared a class with his brother. The teacher he had for the shared physics class, his twin had for Irish class as well. Earlier in the day, the twin had gotten in trouble in Irish for talking. They enter into physics and my dad gets pulled out of class for a talking to by the teacher. When my dad finally understood what was happening after like 5 minutes of shouting, he laughed and told the teacher he got the wrong kid. He went back into class and the twin was just sitting there laughing his butt off. Story 8. Most of the people I knew in high school would eventually figure us out, seeing as most of us had known each other since elementary school. Now that I'm in college, I have random people walk up to me to talk about the next homework assignment, essay, or just any class that my twin is taking to me, not realizing that we're two different people. It's amazing to see the different reactions of people once I break the news to them. It's always either visibly confused, laughter, and then maybe an, "Oh, F you," followed by even more laughter once they realize they've been talking to the wrong person the whole time. Story 9. Not exactly a twin thing. My dad and I look a lot alike though, sound the exact same, say the exact same things, etc. My dad is also only 20 years older than me. I'm 20, he is 40. So before his gray hair started setting in, I thought it would be smart to use his license one night to go pick up my friends and hang out. After dropping off my friends from our shenanigans, a cop pulled me over. F me, am I right? I used his ID, grabbed the insurance and registration from the glove box, and tried to play it cool. Well, I didn't play it cool enough. The cop ended up giving me a ticket for speeding, 1 through 5, over nothing too bad. So to try and cover it up, I printed off a notice for him to show up in court along with the ticket in the mailbox from the police department, thinking it'd be a simple in and out fight of the ticket. Dad shows up and says he has no clue what the heck they are talking about, and he wasn't even out that night, so it's impossible for him to have gotten a ticket. Well, the cop was there and swore up and down that it was my dad. Went to the extent of saying his voice even sounds the exact same as he remembered. Dad ended up putting 2 and 2 together to get 95, and that's how I had to pay my dad back $95. Now he just lets me use his old ID when we go to restaurants to get beer because all they usually do is a quick glance at the date and photo. So nothing is rubbing between us anymore. Edit. With the voice thing, I've been dating my girlfriend for 4 years now, and if she is not in the same room as my dad and I, she cannot tell the difference between who is talking. Same thing goes with my dad's new wife, about a year. Also comes in handy when my siblings are acting up because I can just yell at them from another room and they usually pipe down, thinking I'm dad. Edit 2. When my dad was looking for a significant other, he was talking to this girl online and she would call him all the time. But she was also the type of girl that would be the only one talking ever. He would possibly get 2 to 3 words in within an hour. So one day he's out in the living room talking to her and I go to the kitchen. From my room, wasn't even in the living room at the time, and my dad just comes in and starts talking to me. Okay, he's off the phone, right? Nope, he has the girl on speakerphone while we are talking in the kitchen. So about 25 minutes go by, and I had to grab my phone charger from the living room. This girl is non-stop talking. Still talking, but I bend over to grab my phone charger and hear the annoying sound finally go away. Or so I thought. I met with a, "You know what I mean? Whatever, dad's name? Hello?" And so being as chill as possible, I go, "Sorry, what was that one of the kids wanted me?" So she spits out how her mom said something or the other to upset her and says, "You know what I mean?" I said, "Yeah, I understand." Bullets are dripping down my face. Some save the world stuff going on. Did it work? Yes, it did. My dad and I stood in the kitchen for about 35 more minutes before he went back into the living room to finish their conversation, or lack thereof. That has got to be so sketchy, dude, to look similar and have the exact same voice as your dad. I mean, what other hijinks could you get into with the power like that? I would just look in the mirror and say, "I'm proud of you, son." Story 10. I dated a girl with a twin sister. Only way to tell them apart, my girlfriend had a freckle under her right eye, and her sister had one under the left. I came home from work one morning, girlfriend was doing the dishes, so I slid up behind her and started kissing her neck. She turned to look at me, and wouldn't you believe it, the freckle was on the wrong side. Girlfriend's sister had come to visit, and nobody bothered to tell me. After the initial shock wore off, I started apologizing. They found it extremely funny. It wasn't the first time, and I am sure after things ended between us, it happened to someone else. I am still friends with both, and they bring it up every time we get a chance to meet up. Story 11. Identical twin here. My brother and I hung out at an internet cafe quite a bit when we were in high school. One day a friend within our circle asked to speak to me on the phone because she thought I was cute and wanted to get to know me more. Of course, I'd always thought better of myself than I actually was, so I naturally accepted this opportunity. However, the conversation got more weird and awkward as we could both not relate to what each other was saying or describing. Then she asked me, "Wait, were you the one wearing black?" To which I responded, No, that'd be my brother." and she quickly closed our conversation by saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought your brother was the cute one. Can you hand the phone to him, please?" I was both slightly insulted for not being cute and messed with. Story 12. Not so much awkward for me, but for the poor girl working drive-thru. I own fast food restaurants, and one day my brother, who is not in the business, decided to come visit a few stores with me. Once we arrived, I had the bright idea of going inside and having my brother go through the drive-thru. The girl at the window immediately gets surprised when he pulls up, and she turned really fast and looked at me and then him. She was literally stuck in her mind, frozen with this weird look on her face for a few seconds. She then turns to him and tries to mumble a sentence, and then turns to me trying to say he looks like me, but it's coming out all wrong because her mind was too boggled, I guess. I immediately told her it was my twin brother because I thought she was having a stroke. She took a deep breath and then started laughing. I don't think I'll ever do that again. Story 13. My siblings and I are triplets. Back in high school, we'd scare people into thinking we're ghosts, or they're seeing a doppelganger by simply walking outside in the hallway. One kid was looking out the door during class and saw one of us pass. Minutes later, he saw another one, followed by another one. Needless to say, people would always remark how they thought they were seeing doppelgangers. It would scare the other kids, even teachers weren't an exception. You have no idea how many times I've pulled over by a teacher and asked, "Didn't you go inside the bathroom just now?" It came to the point where they would simply ask if I was there moments prior, and if I say no, they'll nod their head knowing it was one of my siblings. Oh, and my parents still have to ask what my name is, and I still have been occasionally mistaken as my other siblings by my older sister, brother, and pretty much everyone in my life. It used to be very annoying, but it's part of my life now. But don't even get me started with my current teachers. We study in a small school, so we share a lot of teachers. Two of my teachers would literally exit my sister's classroom and go straight to my room. When they open the door and their eyes land on me, they get very confused. "Weren't you from the other section?" One time my teacher stopped talking in the middle of the class and asked, "Why are you here? Shouldn't you be in the other classroom?" My class will laugh with me and will correct the teacher together. Story 14. So after a while, you kind of just accept the confusion. There have been many instances where one of my brother's friends that I had never met came up to me and started talking to me like we were both good buddies. It has happened so many times that I have just gotten used to pretending to be my brother to save some of the awkwardness. That being said, one time my brother, twins obviously, was visiting from out of town. He was outside trying to figure out why his car was making a weird noise whilst I was inside watching his baby. About 5 minutes later, my neighbor comes bursting through the door yelling at my brother, wondering why my brother was pretending to not know who he is. I loved seeing the dumbfounded expression on his face when he saw me inside, and it dawned on him that he was yelling at my twin. Not so awkward for me, but certainly for my neighbor and my twin. There are so many instances of mistaken identity though. You kind of just become jaded to most people's reactions to the extent that it doesn't really feel as awkward for you as it probably does for them when they realize their mistake. The better question would be, friends of identical twins on Reddit, what's the most awkward thing that has happened because you couldn't tell them apart? Story 15. We are both French born. He moved back to France with the rest of my family while I stayed in the US for school. As a result, most of my accent is gone and I act very American. My family acts like I'm weird, but apart from that, we are identical. Also the fact I'm gay. So this is where the weird crap starts. Brother flies over to spend the week with me and my roommates for Thanksgiving. We have a secret bet going on about who can pretend to be the other for as long as possible. Huge but mistake. Apparently, one of my floor mates, still live in a dorm, took some liquid courage and started hitting on my brother thinking he was me. And my brother, not wanting to lose the bet, played along. I walk in and loudly yell, "What the F?" with my best French accent. No way I'm losing either, which makes floor mate very confused and aroused. I ended up losing the bet because I was too creeped out by the fact my brother, who has a girlfriend back home, was letting this random dude he's never met almost ride him. Yeah, I will be packing my bags for a nice holiday in France in a few days, with a new bet starting when I land. The lengths will go to win a sibling competition. I mean, I've never gone that far, but I understand the... You know what, never mind. Story 16. I'm an identical twin. Lots of awkward things happened throughout our lives. My brother and I are pretty identical, apparently. We went our separate ways after high school. He went to a different university in a different state in a completely different field of study from me. So after high school, all of our friends and circles were completely different. This is important. We never really told our friends we had a twin or were twins. It doesn't really come up in a conversation. So on his wedding day, we were constantly getting mixed up by guests who didn't know, but the most awkward moment was a day before the wedding. He got married in a different state, so we all had to go up to attend his wedding. I was with my then girlfriend slash fiance walking around this foreign town in one of their shopping centers when I was suddenly stopped by a complete stranger. She said, "Oh my gosh, John!" My brother's name, that's not his real name, just an example. "Who is this woman? Is the wedding still on?" She was staring daggers at me and my fiance, and it took me a few seconds before it dawned on me what I should say. Much hilarity ensued before I had to call my brother and tell him that his wife better call her bridesmaid and tell her that the wedding is still on. I love being an identical twin. So many stories. Story 17. When we were just kids, my twin brother and I were in separate classes for almost everything, having been unjustly split up since primary school. One year in secondary school, we had a schedule that meant one day a week we had the same teacher for science, but him in the morning class and me in an afternoon class. One particular day, this teacher was off for some reason and a substitute teacher was filling in. I walk into my afternoon class, sit down with my friends, and get my crap out onto my desk. About 5 minutes into the lesson with this substitute teacher, he squares up on me and says loudly in front of the class, "Why are you here? You were in my morning class." Everyone stops and looks at me. No, I wasn't." "Yes, you were." I then realized what was going on. "Oh, you're probably thinking of my brother. I have an identical twin and he has science in the morning." He pauses slightly. "I've been a teacher for over 30 years. Do you think I've never heard someone tell me that they have an identical twin?" The whole class is now watching to see how this turns out. "I swear to you, sir, I have an identical twin." My friends, while laughing, try to back me up. Eventually, I had to go to the school office with him just to confirm that I do indeed have a twin brother. I mean, to argue otherwise doesn't really make much sense at all. Like he just loves science. He's like, "I gotta catch you on the sequel, man." Story 18. I was upgrading to a night school a couple years ago. During an evening bio class, I left the classroom to go to the bathroom. As I stood in front of the urinal to do my thing, I hear two guys coming in from behind me and whispering. I thought, well, this is how I get mugged, considering that they were awfully close to me. My stuff shut tight due to fear and I zipped myself up. I turn around and I'm greeted by two fellas looking at me oddly. I couldn't understand why, but just as I was about to wash my hands, one of the guys slaps his hands across my head pretty hard and says, "Yo, what are you doing here?" His friend suddenly realizes I'm not my twin brother, whom they were affiliated to, and immediately says, "You idiot! That's not E, that's his twin brother, you stupid piece of crap." The guy who hit me had his face turn white and immediately apologized. They both left after, and yelling continued. I go home and ask my brother if he knew the two guys with X description, and he says, "Yeah, those guys. It would be weird if they bumped into you. One of the guys doesn't know I'm a twin." My twin has gotten me in more trouble than anything. Being a twin is fun. If I had kids one day, I'll have endless stories to tell. Story 19. My twin and I basically made a friend, but each time one of us saw him, the other wasn't there. Imagine our shock when at a party we both came to greet him and he exclaimed, "What the F? There's two of you?" He thought I was my twin every time, which makes it awkward friendship-wise. Another awkward time was when my sister was still a student and one of her classmates saw me on the bus and got vexed because, thinking I was my twin and that I knew her, I should have saluted them. She proceeded to just stare at me with insistence the whole ride. That was creepy since I really didn't know her at all. She then narrated to my twin sister the story of this doppelganger of hers she saw on the bus, when my sister simply replied, "Oh, that's gotta be my twin you saw." Her friend didn't believe in her bullcrap. Long story short, they threw a party at my twin's flat a month later, and as I was speaking with guests, all I heard was this loud scream as someone approached me, "F, you're real!" Story 20. I work at a tutoring center on campus. One day I had an appointment with a girl I had seen a couple of times and noticed the person in my next appointment had the same last name. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think to ask her or any of my coworkers about the relationship between the two. That session ends. She walks out, and a minute later I go to the waiting room for the next student. But the only person that's there is the girl I just got done tutoring. I shrugged and went back to my station, waited a few minutes and checked again. The same girl is still there. This time I made eye contact and said something along the lines of, "Oh, do I have another appointment with you?" To which she replied, "No, that's my sister." I said okay and returned to my station again, and a couple minutes later she comes back very confused and asked if I'm ready for her. Turns out the girls were both wearing dark jeans, gray hoodies, and their hair back, and were wearing almost identical glasses. I spent the 10 minutes thinking it was the same exact person. I was so embarrassed. Story 21. I'm not a twin, but recently a coworker had this happen to her twin sons. They're identical twins. One military and one a regular working man. The civilian son was in a car accident and needed to be taken to a hospital via ambulance. Nothing too major. The cop found his ID in the armrest and used the information to write his ticket. Son was clearly at fault for the accident and admitted it. The odd part is the ID was an old one from the son who is currently across the country in boot camp for the military. The cop admitted his mistake and said he'd fix it. I don't know who to point the finger at, but long story short, ticket didn't get fixed, so ticket went unpaid, so they issued an arrest warrant. The kicker is the warrant was in the wrong name too, technically speaking. So the other son, halfway across the country, was pulled by his boot camp training guy, I'm not sure what title he had, and informed his clearances would be revoked because he's a fugitive. He was advised after they pieced together what happened to seek legal counsel. It's all been sorted out since, but when she told me all of this happened to her sons, I was speechless. How can a simple, careless, and lazy mistake lead to this much chaos? Story 22. Not me, my ex. He is an identical twin. Here's some highlights of the a-holes making things awkward. My ex has pretended to be his twin to get out of traffic tickets. My brother is in the military, and so we would say things to my ex like, "You are a walking felony," impersonating a military officer. Went to their 10-year high school reunion. My ex wears glasses, his brother does not, and I kept getting asked how I could tell them apart because no one else could. My answer was, well, ex wears glasses and he lives with me in the Midwest, so they are from the South. They lived apart for like 10 years before I met my ex, and so they don't look quite the same. The first time I met his brother, I said, "I don't know why no one can tell you apart. You don't look identical. You look like brothers, but not twins." Cut to a few hours later, and after some alcohol, I'm asleep on the couch, and my ex is opposite of me, also asleep. His brother is sitting on the floor beneath my ex, and so I wake up and see just their profiles. I practically leapt off the couch because they look identical. The brother gives me a look, and all I can say is, "You look identical." The brother would use my ex as an excuse to cheat on his girlfriend. He could get a text at night saying to cover for him. And before he moved to my state, girls would think my ex was his brother when he was out, and he'd have to okay it off, apparently. My ex would be like, "My brother's a dog, I'm not like that." Cut to 7 years later, me kicking him out of the house for having a 2-year affair. F you, Alex and Nate. Story 23. Here's a story that still makes me feel terrible 20 years later. When I was 12, this new kid had joined my class. We got into a fight over some stupid crap on his second day and he hit me. Made pretty good contact and then booked it. At the end of the day, I saw him on the way to the bus and I ran right at him and full force body checked him into a wall. He got cuts and grazes on his face and hands where he hit the wall and immediately started crying. Only at this point did I realize there was another version of him a few meters ahead. Obviously, the other version was the actual guy I had a fight with, and this was his entirely innocent twin brother who, of course, had also just joined the school. I felt incredibly awful, and in hindsight, it was pretty cowardly attack even if it had been the right kid. I got detention and a strong talking to from the school, but to his credit, the brother I had actually meant to attack defended me to the school and said it was partially his fault for starting trouble earlier in the day. I did end up being pretty good friends with both of them for a few years, until we went to different sixth forms. Story 24. Some years back, while working as a pit manager in a casino industry and on a break, my identical twin brother who works for and with unions came onto the main gaming floor with a megaphone and no shoes, I think, to stage a walk-off for staff members. When I came up from my break, people were either congratulating me or ignoring me. I got pulled into a meeting with security and other managers to explain myself. Probably should have mentioned being a twin earlier. A couple of years after, I'm working in the logistics industry, and one of the major ports is having strike action causing massive delays with deliveries. Some of my clients called me and asking why I'm on TV outside the port with a megaphone causing trouble. It's not me, it's my identical twin, but none of them believed me. Recently, I'm working in the software industry, and one day I get a couple of calls from clients who are sorry to hear about my mental illness in the family, and that they always thought there was something different about me. My twin has been running around our country bringing awareness to mental illnesses and was plastered all over the news. My bro is pretty awesome and does a lot of good. I'm not mad at all. Story 25. A few innocent incidents. My wife slapped my twin's butt. She thought it was me from behind. Another time I was driving with my twin, my wife calls me and goes on Bluetooth. So I let my twin speak to my wife as we have identical voices. They must have been chatting for 20 minutes until my wife started getting saucy with the conversation. And back in high school, my brother took a test for me. Best one is when my brother took my driving license test and he passed out because Asians were taking tests for other people. The driving test company installed facial recognition cameras and we got caught. I had to retake the test, sadly. Police wanted to charge us for identity fraud and we said, it's more like identity sharing, since I knew what he was doing. The cop was not amused. Story 26. My boyfriend is an identical twin. They get mistaken pretty often, which is sometimes funny, sometimes awkward, sometimes kind of scary. Like that one time some angry dude walked up to my boyfriend, calling him by his brother's name, demanding his money back. When my boyfriend told him that he is in fact not his brother but his twin, the dude thought he was telling bullcrap. Passport saved his butt. It gets pretty awkward when my parents or our friends confuse them. When an old friend of one of us was like, "You both fit so well, you're such a cute couple," pointing to his brother and me. But the most awkward situation occurs because of the dumb questions people ask about us. How often do you mistake them? Never. Have you ever kissed or effed the wrong twin on accident? No! Why did you choose boyfriend's name and not his brother? Because they are two individual people and I just happened to fall in love with my boyfriend's personality? And my personal highlight, do you just all have relations and intimacy together, or do you have relations with one by one? Story 27. Friends of mine are identical twin brothers. Went to the same high school, same class, and everything. During the last year, it became clear one was going to pass and the other was going to fail. However, on graduation day, the one that was going to pass had a date and couldn't attend. So the one that failed dressed up as his brother, they have different tastes in clothing, and collected his brother's diploma so his brother could go on a date. True brotherhood. Other story, but I wasn't there so I can't confirm. During freshman week here in the Netherlands, we have a load of parties crammed into one small week, so sometimes it can get a bit wild. Guy meets a girl at a bar, chats her up and goes home with her. Wakes up the next morning and sneaks out, all clear. 2 days later, he runs into that girl again, chats her up again, also goes home with her. Wakes up in the next morning, notices it's a different room somehow, tries to sneak out. Bumps into what he thinks was the girl he left in the bed, but was actually the girl from 2 days ago. Dude had slept with twins with 2 days in between. Story 28. I'm not a twin, but I know a pair of identical twins. They are hard to keep track of if you've known for a hot second. They are Shane and Sean, or as I'll call them, Sean the ex-con and Shane the Bible thumper. Sean has prison tats and a couple of scars on his face, but when he cleans up, he can almost get away with passing off as his brother. And Shane, sweet Bible-thumping Shane, is 100% there for his brother through all of his F-ups. So mind you, he's been in jail more than a few times, had many tangos with the popo. You'd think they know he has an identical twin. Nope. So one day Sean gets in a barroom brawl and ends up on the losing end, and he ends up in the hospital. Shane, sweet Bible-thumping Shane, comes running because that's his brother and God made them from one, and he will be there no matter what. Except for when the cops see him and try to arrest him. You have the wrong man, sir. I'm his identical twin. He's in that room. Points to a room that conveniently has its blinds drawn. Yeah, all you guys got identical twins, and we'll let you go as soon as your identical twin walks in and turns himself over. No, please, sir, I'm not lying. My name is Shane. I'm a Baptist teacher at Bringing in the Faith now, Sean, huh? Shut your gab. You have the right to. And their mama shows up. Their high-strung, overprotective, redneck mama. It's not an insult when it's true. I, too, am a redneck. She sees him in handcuffs and basically loses her dang mind. She rushes towards them and rips open Shane's shirt. Do you see no prison tattoos? Do you see no prison fight scars? This is not the man you were looking for. He's right there. Points to the room Shane had pointed to earlier. The cops think she's nuts, but one of them is like, Sure. Let me go check and, holy crap. There he is. Another one of them is in this room. Like I said, my name is Shane. I'm a preacher at the Baptist church, and I'm here to counsel my brother in his time of need. Needless to say, the cops apologize to both of them and his mother for the mistake. It also makes for a hysterical story that they get to tell. And before anyone asks, Sean has really turned his life around, got married, and has a couple of kids. He also started bleaching his hair blonde after the last incident. He'd never gotten his brother almost arrested before. Story 29. When I got married, my twin was my best man. Throughout the reception, dozens of people congratulated him on getting married. While in college, my girlfriend's roommate took her aside and informed her that she'd seen me cheating on her with another woman. It didn't take her long to figure out that her roommate had actually seen my twin with his girlfriend. Another time in college, a mutual friend saw us sitting together and loudly exclaimed, "Wow, you two could be like twins. For some reason, no one had mentioned that we were twins and he hadn't seen us in the same place at the same time, despite having known us for a couple of years. Other things to note, my face easily unlocks my brother's iPhone and saying, "Hey Siri," gets it to respond to me. However, he has to mimic my voice to get the same result from my iPhone. He does this by talking in a comically low pitch, though I believe my voice sounds normal. Story 30. Finally, something I can respond to. So my brother and I are identical twins, and we take the twin thing pretty seriously. I mean, everyone always asks, what's it like being a twin? The least we can do is live it to the fullest. To give a little background, we look and sound very alike. We both went to the same college and both majored in history in hopes of becoming history teachers. Once we graduated from college, we both looked for jobs in the same area and lived in the same city, but not together. We also oftentimes interviewed for the same jobs. Well, eventually I got a job in the big city in the region that we both interviewed for. After a couple of months with absolutely huge class sizes, they asked me if my brother was still looking for a job, which he was. They told me to tell him to give them a call, and right there, boom, he got a job at the exact same school I was teaching at. So now this school has two identical twin history teachers. For all the other twins out there, I'm sure you had your fun in grade school switching classes with your twin. My twin and I did the same. But now we got to do it from the other end and switch classes on our students. The first day he came into school, we wore the exact same thing to the confusion of students and staff alike. The unintended consequences of all of this was the ensuing confusion when students would eventually switch semester classes and go to one twin instead of the other, since there were now two Mr. Heretic Anthems. It kind of became a long-running joke that our school was matching history teachers, and students would consistently ask one another, "Which twin do you have?" It was a lot of fun, and I loved seeing and working with my twin on a daily basis. I've since moved on to teach at a new school, but my twin is still there, and apparently people still ask what happened to me. And I've told him to tell anyone asking that, "What other twin? Are you sure you just didn't see me twice?" Story 31. My twin brother, let's call him George, ran a real estate company that got into some shady business in the mid-2000s. I'm not sure of the details, but long story short, he was sent to prison for defrauding investors. A few months later, he has what appeared to be a heart attack. The whole family rushes over to the hospital to see him, myself included. While waiting for the news, I decided to go grab a snack from a vending machine. Meanwhile, my devious brother, pretending to be me, goes and says his goodbyes to his family and slips out. As soon as the security details on him notices he's gone, they see me returning from the vending machine, mistake me for him, and assuming an escape attempt, tackle me to the ground. Meanwhile, he's taken off to God knows where, and I have to explain to them the whole twin situation. It wasn't the first or the last time he tried something like this either. He's a bit of piece of work. But hey, at least I still have hair. He's mostly bald. Story 32. While I had some small interactions with people thinking I am my brother, he by far had the weirdest experiences. We used to go to the same college, but we followed different majors. My brother at one point went to the toilet and claimed a spot at a urinal. While one of my teachers walked in, my brother didn't know this man, nor did he ever see him before. My teacher, however, did know me. So my teacher took the spot right next to my brother and just started talking to him, but a bit normal talk like, "Hey, how are you? How is the project going?" etc. My brother, being polite and at this point seriously confused and creeped out, was just answering the questions and trying to wrap up his business ASAP, and my teacher keeps yapping on. He is not registering the sheer terror vibe that my brother has. So my brother wraps up and just rushes out of there. In the evening when we meet up, he told me about this dude who was talking about stuff and such and how creepy it was. So I'm like, that sounds like one of my teachers. And he starts describing him and I keep losing it. Me and that teacher get along really well. The kicker is that 2 years later, this teacher is at the moment also my examinator for my graduation project, and he mentions that situations and I just lose it. Apparently pretty soon in, he figured how scared my brother looked and he was like, okay, maybe he doesn't like talking while peeing. Also, Todd, who does effing like that at a urinal unless you're good friends? And only after he was done and walking back to his office, he noticed me sitting at a table discussing something with my study coach. Something he walked past on his way to the toilet, and that was when he realized that he had been making my brother severely uncomfortable, and I am losing it during the conversation. Also, the time my mom mistook my brother for me. It was summer, and I was chilling on the couch, and at one point my mom went to chill in the garden, and I went to play some games. Too hot to do anything, to be honest, and my brother came home from work and sat in the exact place that I did. So my mom comes back in and is calling my brother by my name and such, and he just texts me, "Mom thinks I'm you." I grab my phone and start filming while going downstairs, and my mom looks back at me, back to my brother, and silently goes, "Oh no." Being identical twins is great though. We are very close, and I compare it with living with myself for 27 years. Story 33. My brother and I are both nurses at the same hospital, just different departments. We get confused for each other almost daily. We worked opposite tours for a while. If he was there, I was not, and vice versa. And I came in once for my first of 3 days, and I was sitting in my normal charting spot, and out of my periphery, I could see one of the patients standing at their doorway just looking at me. She was not my patient that day, and each time I'd look up, she'd do that obvious turnaround thing to try and hide it. But it was a busy floor, so I thought nothing of it. Till my CNA told me a little later, "Miss X in bed Y said she's been waiting to say hi to you all day, but is a little hurt because you won't even look at her. She said she knows you." We have an older, crazier, male population, so this normal-looking young woman already stood out, but I certainly didn't remember or recognize her, so I decided to save face and went in just to let her know I didn't actually know her, or at least apologize that I didn't remember her, and she was visibly offended and said, "You took care of me all day yesterday." This was my first day on, and that's when it clicked that she had come from my brother's department the day prior. I always have fun explaining this to people because it sounds like I'm making fun of them. No, I swear there's someone who looks exactly like me in another department. Story 34. My brother's now ex-wife used to work in our hometown mall. I hadn't lived in the area for a little while because I was away at college. I came home one weekend with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and we went to the mall. A few minutes after walking in, I get a text from my brother asking if I was home and at the mall. Apparently his wife called, freaking out at him because her friends called her and told her that he was there with some other girl holding hands and walking around. Pretty great. A few years later, my wife and I and my brother and his wife were all at the store together. I was buying the two of them a new laptop because they were a little short on money and needed one. We got split up a bit in the aisles. I bent over to look at one of the laptops, and a few seconds later, I feel some hands sliding around my waist. So I stand up and turn around. It was my brother's wife, thinking I was him. I died laughing. My brother and my wife died laughing. His wife didn't find it very funny and was thoroughly embarrassed. Story 35. Me and my twin both spent time in the military, so I have two stories. My first story is when we were both in training. We joined the U.S. Army a few months apart. I joined first. My truthful, caring, and loving recruiter, along with a $20K bonus, this was back in 2007, got me to go military police. This meant many weeks at Fort Leonard Wood for training. While I was going through the training specifically for my MPMOS job, we were taken by our drill sergeants to a nearby running track. While we were running, another group from a nearby barracks was brought to run. Fort Leonard Wood does basic training for all types of jobs. However, the main MOS job training is for MPs and engineers. So I knew my brother was on base in boot camp, but I had no idea what unit he was with. Now, back to the running. Because we were technically done with boot camp and were in the MP training stage, we were given a different looking reflective vest to wear anytime we ran. So I'm running around the track, and this new group of privates who are in boot camp show up and start running. Their drill sergeants are screaming at them to not speak to us. So I'm running, and this one random private from the unit runs up next to me and is giving me this weird look. Then another, then finally one whispers, "Hey Taylor, what the heck are you doing? You're going to get us all smoked." So, since me and my twin are both Taylor, it still hasn't dawned on me yet. I'm like, what the heck are these guys talking about? Well, I give him this puzzled look, and you can see he's figured something out. Next thing I know, my twin brother comes running up beside me. I didn't want him to get in trouble, so I just told him to hang in there. And it only gets easier, and a few more words of encouragement and left. Well, because of this, I now knew what unit he was in and would develop my next plan of action. So a week or so later on Sunday, we were allowed to attend any religious service we wanted to. I did some asking around and figured out that he would be only allowed to go to one specific church on post. So I went to that church, and sure enough, I found him. Now back in 2007, the black beret was still a thing, and it was a good way to tell privates in boot camp from privates in their MOS, job, school. So the drill sergeants don't normally attend church, so I hung out with him and his friends during service, and then it ended, so I was heading out. Well, the drill sergeants do pick up at the privates and the front door and march them back. Well, as I'm walking outside, I put my beret on. I crap you not, as that beret hits my head, I hear someone yelling and running towards me. It's a drill sergeant, and he has lost his crap. And then a second female drill sergeant joins the fray. I'm just taking the butt chewing, and then the male drill sergeant makes the statement, "Are you really stupid enough to wear that beret and think you could get away with it?" So I realize they still think I'm my twin. At this point, I have no other option but to try and get them to understand. I go, "Drill sergeant, I'm not who you think I am." In hindsight, that wasn't a very helpful statement, but at the time I wasn't really thinking clearly. They both looked at me puzzled and then started yelling again, and then my brother finally makes his way out the door and realizes it's me getting torn up, and runs over and jumps to parade next to me. Honest to God, the look on their faces was priceless, and the male DS simply looks at us both and goes, "What the heck?" So now that they are a bit calmer and the female even laughs a bit, I explain that I'm in MP school, and I just went to church to see my twin who was with them. They go off on a tangent about how this is a big deal and both commanders should have been told, but ultimately I was freed and told I needed to let my DS know. To shorten this up a bit, nothing happened other than the initial butt chewing, and my commander and his commander just told us to stay away from each other, and a few jokes were cracked. An even cooler part was that they let him come to my MP graduation because he was the only family I had that was able to attend. Him and his battle buddy were in the back just stuffing their face with cake. He graduated basic about a week after me and went on to his training too. Second story is much shorter. So he ultimately gets stationed in Germany, and I'm deaf coming to visit. Well, he was with support job for a special forces unit and got to know a lot of the SF guys, including some Navy SEALs. Well, he had something come up and he had to be gone for a couple of days, so I was just hanging out at his house. Well, I couldn't drive in Germany, so me and his wife went to get something to eat at a place on post. Some backstory. Sometimes it's easier as an identical twin to just go along with someone who thinks you're the other twin. Situations like a quick greeting and hellos are much easier just to say hello than to go through the explanation of, "Hey, wrong twin." Anyway, I'm eating and this guy in BDUs walks by, and I quickly see he is a Navy SEAL. He stops and says, "Hey Taylor, what's up?" Well, I didn't want to go through the whole thing, so I just say, "Not a lot, just eating." Well, apparently him and my twin were boys, and he felt I was being an a-hole, and he quickly made it weird. He was like, "Okay, you okay, man?" And I still am hoping this would end, and was like, "Yeah, everything's fine." Apparently he felt like I was being a jerk and a bit aggressive, so he now obviously upset says, "What is going on, man?" Apparently him and my brother talk a lot, so now he was about to whoop my butt. So I figure I have no choice and had to go into explaining to this Navy SEAL that I'm not who he thinks I am, yada yada yada. It took my brother's wife collaborating my story for him to believe me. Was all laughs in the end, but that happens more than you think. Story 36. Back in junior high, I was always known as the more mischievous twin, often getting myself in trouble with yard supervisors, counselors, and teachers. On the other hand, my brother was much more mature at the time and understood that school was no place to mess around. He was always the one to get straight A's, while I would just get by with passing grades. Well, during our 8th grade, our yearly state benchmarks came up and we were assigned to specific rooms with teachers as proctors. They usually assigned it by homeroom, but due to some teachers' schedules, we were given substitutes. That year, my English homeroom teacher was on maternity leave, so the art teacher from next door volunteered to watch her class in her absence. Before this test, we bounced from substitute to substitute every week or two, so we didn't really have a stable homeroom environment at the time. A few classmates and I decided to utilize the situation to our advantage and wreaked havoc on any sub that came in. So before we took the test, we needed to get out all of our supplies beforehand to prevent cheating. It was a requirement to bring at least 2 wooden pencils, but you could bring as many as you like. I decided to bring about 10, and got a majority of it stuck in the ceiling, which caused the boards up top to shift, which created an opening to the space above. Well, once the art teacher noticed this, she went ballistic, stating how this is destruction of property and how she's going to have me sent to the principal and given a 0. During this outburst of rage, 2 mice fell through the ceiling and landed right next to her foot. Boy, did she have a set of pipes on her. The next 15 minutes of this class consisted of 15-something preteens screaming their head off as 2 mice scurried around trying to find an exit. The class ended up having to relocate classrooms while the custodians wrangled them up. I got sent to the office, so that was the last I saw of that art teacher for the next few days, since this stunt resulted in a suspension. Well, my brother went to school the next day and had a run-in with this art teacher, and the lady lost it and started shouting profanities and even used the phrase, "devil child." He ended up going to the office and she had to publicly apologize to the school for her incident. Story 37. Nowadays, my twin and I don't look nearly as identical as we did when we were kids. But back then it was almost impossible, and a lot of people relied on me and my brother not being a-holes about who is who and be where we were supposed to be. In 3rd grade, we made a joke about switching places for a day. None of our teachers could tell us apart, and our friends that we had couldn't either. 3rd graders aren't terribly smart. After about a week, all our friends figured we were going to do it, and finally asked us if we had switched, which we didn't. They figured we were lying to make it believable, so we all told the teachers, me and my brother with them, to try and get it to stop. The teachers, though, didn't believe us. We were called liars, sent to the principal's office, and told we were going to receive a 3-day suspension. All the while fighting with these teachers to try and prove we've been doing exactly what we were supposed to do. The awkward part is where they called my no bullcrap dad to come in from work and identify us, and then takes us home because we've pulled one over on the staff. Dad gets to the school and points out that both boys have been in the right classroom, insults everyone on staff for not being able to distinguish between 2 students who they've seen every day for years. He then proceeds to threaten everyone in the room that we're about to lawyer up if this so much even mentioned on either of our records, and that because of the gross incompetence of the teaching staff, there could be real issues should one of us go missing. I got treated differently by the teachers for the rest of the year. Most of them still wouldn't call me by name out of fear of getting it wrong. I didn't end up pulling that switch prank until high school anyway. Story 38. Not me, but my friend in high school. She and her twin did not get along. She was a well-behaved teenager for the most part. She got good grades and stayed out of trouble. She found a little mischief here and there, but never anything too serious. She liked to have fun and be young and dumb, but was pretty level-headed and didn't want to go to jail. Her twin sister, on the other hand, seemed pretty determined to go to jail. Drugs, alcohol, indecent exposure, seducing older men, trying to seduce teachers, stealing, destruction of property, etc. There were few limits that this girl had. Thanks to her crazy twin, I was well aware of what my friend looked like naked because her friend often would flash me or walk around nude just to upset her sister. I made a running joke out of it. If we were at her house hanging out and her sister would try and flash me, I'd turn to my friend and say, "You've got nice boobs," and completely ignore her sister. It irritated them both. Anyway, one day my friend and I are hanging out at a shopping center when a cop rolls up and grabs her, puts her in cuffs, and starts charging her with theft and destruction of property. I had to explain to him that she has a twin sister, but he couldn't let her go without verifying it. She ended up being taken to the police station, and I had to go back to her place and explain to her parents what was happening. We all went down there together and called her twin on the way to pick her up. I knew she wouldn't want to tell us where she was if we told the truth, so I convinced her mom to lie and say that her sister was in an accident. She bought it, and we picked her up and took her to the station to get her sister. The cop that arrested her was the one that greeted us at the door, and after looking through the twins' phone, my friend and her swapped places in the cell, and her parents let her stay a couple of nights in lockup before getting her out. After high school, my friend went to college, and her sister stayed behind. After 10 years, I can report the following. Her twin cleaned up her act, maybe, and got married to a dentist. She has a kid now. She seems happy, but I'm not entirely convinced she isn't cheating on her husband, if her Snapchat is anything to go by. My friend is an interior designer and has 2 kids and a happy family. They live in a suburb in Oklahoma with a beautiful house, and her husband is a cop. Story 39. I used to live with my sister right after college, and one night she went out to dinner without me. When she came back, she said that some weird lady was waving at her all night and trying to catch her eye, and was visibly annoyed when she didn't respond. We agreed it was weird and then thought nothing more of it. The next day I go into work, and my boss immediately calls me into office and asks me if I have a problem with her. I stand there in shock, as we've always gotten along really well, and I'm racking my brain to think of what I may have said or done, but come up with nothing. I stammer, "No, why would you think that?" And she replies, "I saw you at dinner last night and waved to you, and you looked really annoyed that I would do that." Then it hit me. I explained that she had seen my twin and not me, and we both had a good laugh. My sister and I agreed from then on, if someone we didn't know said hi, we would just play along. Story 40. In middle school, my brother and I thought it would be funny to switch places in English because we were in the same class. He wears glasses and I don't, and most people couldn't tell us apart anyways, but I decided to put on his glasses and sit in his seat for the class. Little did I know, but for that class we were assigned into groups and given partners. Then we were going to each group and were given a turn reading a part of a book to the class. Now I'm taller than he is, and I was purposely trying to slouch to add to my ruse, and across the room I could see he was trying to sit as straight as possible. When it was my turn to read, I raised the pitch of my voice to match his as close as possible, but I had not considered one problem. I was wearing his glasses. When it was his turn to read, he wouldn't have them to use. As we got closer to his turn to read, the class started to snicker, and our teacher became very aware something was up. What is so funny? I was sweating bullets because I know she was ready to knock some heads. No one said a word. The whole class was so tense when it became his turn to read, and he nailed it. I mean, the voice isn't that deep, but he nailed it. To this very day, she still doesn't know what was so funny. Oops. Story 41. I'm an identical twin, and strangely enough, my dad is an identical twin as well. It's not genetic, it's just a random mutation, so it's super rare. Growing up as a twin with a father who is a twin has been really cool, because he gets all the twin crap that people who aren't twins just can't get. Anyway, my brother and I followed in our family's tradition of service in the Marine Corps. We didn't want to ship out at the same time, but neither of us wanted to go second. So we ended up shipping out to Paris Island together, and consequently, we were put in the same platoon. I have so many stories from being a twin with my brother in my platoon. Honestly, it was awful. We got harassed for what seemed like double everyone else despite not being worse than the other recruits. But it gave me a bunch of awesome stories, and I look back on it very fondly. During hand-to-hand combat drills and ground fighting, sparring, etc., they would have always have my brother and I fight each other. We both wrestled in high school and have very explosive competitive natures. They would yell, "The Marine Corps only need one of you, so you're gonna fight to the death!" My senior drill instructor actually pretended to drop my brother in third phase right before the final stretch of boot camp just to F with my head. While I hated having him in my platoon, that's my brother, so it worked very well. That's just one story of many. Being a twin is such a unique, lifelong experience that truly shapes people, and I have no idea what life would be like without him, even though we often don't get along. Story 42. I'm not a twin, but I have a younger sister who is practically identical to me in facial features, hairstyle, and body/body language. She's 8 years my junior though, and is tan to my pale, brunette to my blonde, and brown-eyed to my grays. All of those differences should be enough, right? But in the brief period of time when I was an adult living away from my family and she was an adolescent or teen in a new town, I was repeatedly mistaken for her when I managed to visit, and was treated poorly all because of my sister's age. It really hit home for me then that adults do not afford children a sense of agency or bodily autonomy. It really changed my worldview. Case in point, I'm 23 or so and travel across 3 states to see my sister be mascot and perform a halftime solo. I arrive a bit late and have never been to her high school, so I'm a bit distracted mapping my way to the stadium when a complete stranger proceeds to grab me by the nape and attempts to frog march me in the wrong direction. AFAIK, I'm being assaulted, so I'm not hearing her tirade about how I'm late and why I'm not in uniform. I skid her to a stop and outmaneuver her, and she just asks who the F she thinks she is, who the F she thinks I am. When she realizes I'm not sister, she apologizes, but I'm upset. Horse collaring is illegal in football, but not in band. My sister begged me not to lose it on her, but it would have been within my rights to hold that glorified bus driver to task. I wish I could replay for you the next few times I was mistaken for my sister because they are somehow subtle. Story 43. I'm not an identical twin, but I've been working with a woman for nearly 2 years, and we get mistaken as twins, or at least sisters, pretty much weekly. We work at a high school, and teachers' staff often ask me about her classes and students, just totally mistaking me for her, and vice versa, or they ask if we're related. On a school dress-up day this year, we went as Thing 1 and Thing 2 for craps and giggles, and everyone lost their minds. Outside of work, our own family members and close friends have confused one of us for the other before. We're both convinced we actually look nothing alike. We're roughly the same height and build, hang out a lot together, do our hair up high, have similar tastes in clothes, and both like to wear dangly earrings. I am a 23-year-old brunette, and she is a blonde 42-year-old. It's pretty weird. Story 44. We had identical twins as managers of our football team in high school. It took me 2 months to realize that whenever they forgot something that they would give us crap for getting him confused with his brother. Sometimes they would even switch names just to make you believe that it was your fault. For weeks I couldn't keep their names straight and I was afraid to confront them when they ignored requests. When I finally was confident enough to call one of them on it, he just smirked a little and got me what I asked for. After that I realized what was going on. I saw that they did it all the time, with everyone. It was kind of their own hazing ritual and a way to avoid work. They would basically ignore your first request and give you crap for it until you could tell them apart. They were very skilled at it. Sometimes when a player would be yelling at one twin for ignoring him, the other one would overhear the argument, get the item, and walk up to the player and hand it to them and say, "Here's what you asked for. What's all the yelling about?" The second twin would act like they were the one that was asked, and even though it was really the first one all along. It would really mess with some players' minds and make them doubt their own sanity. Story 45. My brother is a real estate developer, while I've always been a bit of a hippie myself. Anyway, right around the time the United States invaded Iraq, he got in huge trouble by the SEC for illegally building houses for Saddam Hussein. He decides to flee down to Mexico, and the police confuse me for him, so I get put in jail. His wife has to come bail me out, and I end up staying with her and my nephew for a while. To make a long story short, my brother fakes his own death, comes back to the United States. His adult son has to hide him in the attic of his model home his real estate development business built. He finally tells the family he's turning himself in, but instead he kidnaps and drugs me and makes me look like him, and I end up in jail again while he makes a run for it. I just can't win with my brother. This is a reference to something and I know it. I just don't know what it is. Story 46. Not me, but a friend. When I was a college freshman, I had a classmate that I got along with quite well. He and I would often study in the same groups, socialize with the same people, so on and so forth. He had this weird thing about him though. He'd change his clothes throughout the day, often switching back and forth between what he'd wear in class and in our study groups, and what he'd wear around campus. I did ask about it. We were parting ways and in a hurry, so he just kind of shrugged before making his way to his next class, and I to mine. It was about 2 months or so before I finally realized he had a twin. The first time I saw them at the same time, it blew my mind. It turns out, either through a joke that got out of hand or just sheer circumstance, the two of them had never bothered to correct me when I addressed the twin, having decided it was just easier to pretend to be his brother for a few minutes than pass whatever message along to his brother later. They were roommates, so saying things like, "Hey, your study group moved the time up to 8, wasn't terribly inconvenient. It was a good laugh though, but led to a rumor that there was a third one wandering around somewhere. Story 47. I had just moved to the same medium-sized town as my identical twin brother. My twin had lived in this town for several years and knew a lot of people. However, not everyone knew he had a twin, much less that I moved to the same town. My brother had been married for several years at this time and I was single. After moving there, I started dating a girl, now my wife, and we went to a local restaurant on a date. Unknown to us, my twin's midwife was there and saw me and my girlfriend on a date. Needless to say, we were acting like boyfriend and girlfriend, or at least I was not treating my date like I had a wife at home with several kids. I found out about a week later the midwife ran into my brother's wife at the store and brought up how she saw her husband at this restaurant with another woman. My brother's wife said he didn't like that restaurant and didn't think it could have been him. The midwife was insistent that she saw him there and was definitely with another woman and not acting like he was a married man to another woman. It took a few phone calls, but it got cleared up pretty quick that it was me and not my brother having dinner with another woman. Basically, my brother's wife called my brother to ask him if he went to that restaurant, and he said he knew I had been there on a date recently. I think the person who was most relieved to find out we were twins was the midwife. She was literally freaking out, thinking she was witnessing one of her clients' husbands cheating on them, just feeling so bad and how to bring it up what she saw to my brother's wife. But now the only awkward thing is Facebook constantly asking for me to tag myself in photos of my brother that get posted. Story 48. Not a twin myself, but I dated an identical twin. For the most part, they looked really similar, but you could completely tell them apart by their faces and voices. One day he was out with his friends at a concert while I was talking to my friend on the phone. She wanted to get to know my new boyfriend better, so I remembered some funny joke he made on one of his old Reddit accounts, and I also happened to remember the username. I googled it. but instead of his account popping up, listings for about 10 different webcam sites pop up. I click on the first one because of course I'm going to click on it, and my screen fills up with photos from a stream of my boyfriend whacking it from the neck down. Needless to say, I freaked. I didn't have an issue with it per se, but I had told him before if he was doing anything like that, he needed to be upfront with me about it. My friend starts having to talk me down from the ledge while I begin to panic, texting him while he's out to no answer. After what feels like hours, my friend asks me, "Are you sure it's him? Is there any possible way it's somebody else?" So for the F of it, I go back and check, even though I know what my boyfriend's chicken looks like, dang it. As I take a closer look, I realize it's his body, but on a different bed, with a different phone nearby. Holy crap, it was his brother. After telling my boyfriend what had happened, his brother admitted to taking the username, had all the campsites taken down, and apologized to me during the most uncomfortable conversation I've had to date. Identical twins, man. Story 49. This man that happened to be a twin messaged me on social media over the course of a few weeks trying to secure a date. I finally agree, as he was very cute. Well, our date night comes around, and the guy bails super last minute because he had to work. I don't stress over it and decide to go out with my friends instead. We show up at a bar and I see the exact guy who bailed on me making out with a girl on the dance floor. I look over and see his twin, also making out with a girl. His twin was a tad shorter than him, so that I know I could tell them apart. Well, me, having some liquid courage, decides to approach this guy when the girl is distracted to politely mention I see what's going on. He proceeds to pretend to be his twin brother, even though his twin brother is standing not too far from him. At this point, my brain hurts from confusion. It's all around a very uncomfortable experience for everyone involved, and a part of me questioning if it really was just his twin and I was wrong in my accusation. Well, lo and behold, I wake up the following morning to a message from him apologizing and saying he pretended to be his twin so that he could still pursue the girl he was making out with and not make me mad in the moment. He continues to ask if I'm still up for the date though. Let's just say I blocked him, and it made for a very humorous story once all was said and done. Story 50. Not me personally, but I played in a band with one twin. Let's call him Dave. Him and Steve were identical and both excellent musicians. They did hate each other though. In two rival bands in a small city, Dave heard that a big local pizza joint was having a huge block party for their anniversary and approached the owner about his band playing it. Signed the contract, all was good. Unbeknownst to us, Steve went in 3 to 4 days after to ask about his band playing the gig and talked to the same manager. He obviously thought it was Dave and basically said, "Yeah man, all is good," brushing him off like he just think he spoke with him a few days prior. So show day comes. Me being in Dave's band, we get there nice and early. I set up all the PA stuff and we are pretty much good to go, hanging out and drinking a beer before going on. Next thing we know, we look over and Dave and Steve are screaming at each other and Steve starts throwing punches. There were hundreds of kids and families just watching in horror. It escalated quickly and they were beating the living crap out of each other. The look on the manager's face when they came running out to see the guys fighting was priceless. The cops were called. We did not play the show or get our money. I am no longer in a band with Steve. Dang, it's not very often you hear about the twins being on the opposite side of each other, you know? This whole thread is about them teaming up and doing all sorts of shenanigans. It's kind of sad, actually, to hear they were rivals, at least to that point. I mean, if you think about it, if there was anybody you could really screw over, it would be the guy that looks and sounds like you. Story 51. My mom and her sister are identical twins. I even used to mix them up as a kid. Once my mom and I went grocery shopping around 6 p.m. on a school night, and about 30 minutes into it, we got a call from my aunt. Turns out that she'd recently started working part-time at the store we were currently in, and she had to call in sick that afternoon. They saw my mom and couldn't believe the gall of my aunt to call in sick but also come in to use her discount. They called her and first tried to get her to confess. They said to her, "Well, we are looking right at you in the store," and then cooled off once she explained that they're twins. Story 52. My identical twin uncles used to go pick up girls and have a friendly competition on who could get the most numbers in one night because it would be truly a test of skill and not looks, since they were identical. How many times they asked the same woman for her phone number and confused the crap out of her by their entirely different methods like, "Hey, you just asked me out 5 minutes ago and you were acting entirely different? What the heck?" Probably thought he was crap-faced beyond belief or had multiple personality disorder. They'd also swap classes, take turns cutting with one of them attending 50% of the other's classes, so it could never be proven who exactly was missing that day. They loved effing with their parents, teachers, siblings, friends, etc. They grew up as those truly inseparable twins who were constantly together. Unfortunately, in 2010, one of them passed away from drug overdose. For a very long time, the surviving twin was lost without his brother he'd always done everything with. He's doing good now, has a wife and a son, but for a good while, he was wanting to self-unalive. Hug your twin. Story 53. Not me, but a kid at my school. In university, we had this essay prevention video made by students with students as actors. It's basically like a what would you do kind of thing where you see and acted out the scenario. The guy who played the perpetrator was graduating that year, and the video would be shown to incoming freshmen the following fall. Said actor had a twin brother who was on a different graduation track and still had a year left at our university. For some reason, even though in the video we specify they are actors, people saw the twin and thought A, he was his actor brother, B, his actor brother was actual essaying people, and people would call him a piece of crap at worst, sometimes ask how he really feels about women and consent, etc., etc. Poor kid was not an offender and he wasn't even the guy in the video. He had to explain this a lot, but you know how people are. You can't convince them once they have something in their head sometimes. Story 54. Not a twin, but was the cause of the awkward thing. I spent a year teaching English as a second language in Japan. There was this one student named Marie. One day I saw her and said, "Hi, Marie," and she said, "No, I'm Yuri." I apologized and got on with my day. I've always been horrible with names, be they English or Japanese, so I wrote it off as that. A few days later, I run into Yuri and say, "Hello, Yuri," and she says, "No, I'm Marie." Again, I apologize and blame my poor memory for names. This goes on for months. "Hey, Yuri." "No, I'm Marie." "Hey, Marie." "No, I'm Yuri." One day I head out into the lobby, and there's Yuri sitting next to Marie. Never dawned on me that we had identical twin sisters for students. They weren't in any of my classes and hardly had classes at the same time. I did a double take and said, "My goodness, there's two of you." They laughed it off, but my coworkers razzed me about it for some time. Story 55. I'm a twin, but have never had anything terribly bad happen. The best examples: a couple of his teachers called me by his name. One gave me a playful light punch in the arm. I must have given the guy a weird look because he later told my brother in class, "I think I punched your brother by mistake because he looked at me like, 'Who the heck are you?'" I once had a friend call the house phone and not think to ask for me. She started talking to him, kind of babbling, and he had to interrupt her to ask, "Are you looking for Jeremy?" I was in band and plenty of people knew me by name. My brother wasn't in any big extracurriculars. Once during some type of planning senior year, someone in our class who was also in band approached us and greeted us as, "Hi, Jeremy," and, "Sorry, what's your name?" His expression was pure watch people die inside. Story 56. When I was in junior high, I had a kid in English class that sat next to me for the entire year. The kid and I were never friends exactly, but we would talk to each other every day, and we were on friendly terms. The last week of school, we were talking to the two kids in front of us, and he suddenly asks me, "Why do you change clothes every day?" I was confused and asked him what he was talking about, and he said, "Yeah, every day after gym class you change your clothes." I was explaining to him that I didn't have gym class with him and he actually got aggravated with me. Then it dawned on me that he must have had gym class with my brother. I told him that he must have had gym class with my twin, and then he actually started to get mad. He didn't calm down until the two people that we were talking to confirmed that I had a twin. The two other people teased him about it a little bit, and he turned bright red. He basically looked down at his desk for the rest of the class and didn't talk to me much for the remainder of the week. Story 57. I was working at a store, and I went to help a family, father, mother, and young girl. I gave the usual, "Can I help you find something?" And as I said that, the little girl hid behind her dad. It was subtle, and I didn't know why until the guy starts yelling at me, "You got some nerve talking to me again." I was confused. I learned that this was the father of my brother's ex-girlfriend, who was not present. He realized I wasn't him and apologized. Now this guy began to slander my brother, accusing him of being abusive to the young girl. He wasn't and would never. And that's why she hid behind her dad earlier. My brother and I were not getting along at this time, so I figured he was being an a-hole lately. But when he started accusing him of some insanely outlandish actions, I knew he was lying. I was stuck in the aisle with this guy for too long. Story 58. Two stories top of my list of funny and awkward things that happened to my twin brother and I. First, my brother and I used to run cross country in high school. On one day I went to school and he didn't, which means he missed his Spanish class, in which his Spanish class name was Marco. That's a relevant detail because later on when I went to cross country practice after school, I was about half a mile down the street when I saw a lady, my brother's Spanish teacher, who I had never met before, chasing me down the street and yelling, "Marco!" at me. Naturally, I did the logical thing and confusedly replied, "Polo?" She thought I was my twin brother, who had apparently ditched her class that day but nonetheless showed up to a running practice after school, and she was ready to demand some answers. She never caught up to me, but she did have a pretty hilarious conversation with me the next day in school. Second, if you're very familiar looking identical twins, people always ask if your significant others ever mix you up. Thankfully, the answer is always no, for obvious reasons. We wear different hairstyles, they always can tell the difference because they like one of you. However, since my brother and I's voices are very similar, it's still easy to get mixed up over the phone. So one time I saw my brother's girlfriend calling his cell phone when he wasn't around, and I seized my opportunity to have some fun. I picked up and pretended to be him, slowly upping the ante of saying ridiculous things until she eventually figured out it was me when I deliberately shouted away from the phone, "Hey, shut up! My side chick is on the phone." She was less amused than I was for sure, but we had a good relationship and had a good laugh later on. Story 59. I'm straight, but my twin is gay. I've been groped by random men in public. Not often, but it has happened a couple of times. The first time it happened, I got visibly upset, and after I explained the situation, the guy apologized profusely. The second time it happened, I just effing laughed, turned around and said, "Hi, I'm Todd's brother." I've also had friends call my fiance behind my back, asking if everything is going alright with our relationship because they've seen me out with a bunch of presumably gay men. She couldn't tell me that story with a straight face. She was laughing so hard. We both had a good laugh, actually. I also had a buddy at work weird out on me too one time. We weren't very close. We would eat lunch together, shoot the crap about football, fishing, normal work buddy stuff. Then one day he started acting a little strange around me, just being distant. I asked him what was wrong and he finally said, "Dude, I didn't know you were into dancing. With guys?" Apparently he saw me downtown walking into a known gay club with some other dudes. I asked him if he thought I looked fabulous. He was speechless. Then I told him what was up and we both had a laugh over it. So yeah, my life has been the script to a bad Adam Sandler movie. Story 60. Example 1. I got my twin's grade, which was a C, and she got my A. Tried explaining to the teacher she mixes us up by showing her all my scored work. Teacher tries to make excuses, refusing to change it. I file a complaint. My grade gets fixed. The teacher then took stress leave for the next year and refused to make eye contact for the rest of my time at that high school. Example 2. I went to a bar with this guy I was dating. I was pretty excited because I really liked him and he wanted to introduce me to his friends. An hour or so later, this guy I was dating accused me of seeing another guy behind his back. I deny it because it wasn't true. This guy claimed his friend saw me a few days prior making out with another guy. I laughed it off, said it must have been my twin. He didn't believe me, and I didn't care enough to vindicate myself because I felt it was so silly. Fast forward 10 years, he's now a successful doctor. Maybe I should have fought harder to prove it. Story 61. Not me, but one of my best friends. Her and her sister are identical redheads to the point where after 20 years of friendship you can still get them confused. 10 years ago, Twin 1 was in a horrific car accident. Jaws of life were required to extract her, and her injuries included a broken leg and a crushed pelvis, requiring some serious hospitalization and rehab. Insurance companies, being what they are, did not want to pay for ongoing care, claiming her injuries were not that bad, and went as far as hiring a private investigator to prove Twin 1 was committing insurance fraud. As things dragged on, there was a court date when the insurance companies was going to play their ace. Hundreds of pictures of Twin 1 playing soccer, walking through the mall, laughing with their friends at a restaurant job. Except the ace backfired as Twin 1 was pushed into the courtroom in her wheelchair by her identical twin sister, Twin 2. They had suspected they were being followed for months, and on the court date they thought it would be funny to wear identical clothing and watch the insurance company and PI sweat. Needless to say, the judge was not impressed by the insurance company's actions and a major settlement was ultimately ruled in favor of the twins. The funny thing is, this took place in a town of about 100,000 people, so they still see the PI around every now and then. Story 62. Really late to the thread, but I'll add for those maybe sorting by new. Me and my twin were on the same baseball team. He was on third and went to steal home. The catcher tagged him out. My brother slid into him and got thrown out of the park for trucking, running into the catcher. Yes, he got thrown out of the park. As in, the umpire watched him go to the parking lot and stay out. I'm in the hole now. Next battery goes up. Then I'm on deck. The batter who is up is on full count when the umpire looks over to see me loosening up my swing. He comes over raising all heck, saying I have to leave the field and I'll probably get disqualified for the next game now. I'm starting to worry because me being a twin never popped into my head. I was maybe 9 or 10 then. When my coach runs up to him and explains to him that I am a twin, he just nodded and walked behind the plate and yelled, "Play ball." Once it was my turn up, he did apologize. Story 63. Sweet, I get to write something. Never anything too awkward, but we would fool with each other. I have an identical twin, and we were in school together all through college. We worked in a restaurant that served sushi like a Subway style. We used to do this trick where someone would order something and I would act like I need to get something under the counter and he would pop up somewhere way down the line. It used to give the customers a jump. We would see a bunch of each other's classmates around campus and they would walk up to us. And every time we wouldn't correct them and do our best to keep the conversation going, we wouldn't tell each other, so it would always make for an interesting future interaction. We also used to switch classes when we were younger, but each of us thought we were smarter than the other, so we would naturally cave and go back. Story 64. Not a twin, but had an awkward run-in with a pair of identical twins once upon a time, more than 25 years ago. I had recently broken up with my girlfriend, found out she was cheating on me, and got a call one day from one of her friends who had always thought was smoking hot. Smoking hot friend of my ex was in need of a ride home, apparently after having gone home with some guy that she had met at a club the previous night. What the heck, I was feeling down and had nothing better to do. Like I said, she was smoking hot, and there was some history of my ex having her smoking hot friend test my loyalty by trying to seduce me. I passed those tests, difficult as it might have been for younger me, which I somewhat regretted after finding out that my ex had actually been cheating on me. I certainly would not have felt too bad about hooking up with the hot friend at this point, so maybe I could get that ball rolling now. So I make the drive out to where smoking hot friend of my ex, we'll just call her Schmof-me for brevity. To my surprise, Schmof-me wasn't ready to leave quite yet and was in the bathroom getting ready. Her host was a very friendly guy who invited me in, offered me a beer, and chatted me up while Schmof-me got ready to go. That chat goes like this. Host: So, how do you know Schmof-me? Me: She's a friend of my ex-girlfriend. We've partied together for years. Host: Nice. She's smoking hot, huh? Me: Right? Host: My twin brother and I met her and her friend at the club last night and brought the party back here to our pad. Host scoots over closer, leans in and whisper. Host: Don't tell Schmof-me, but after I hooked up with her, I ran into my twin on a bathroom run, and we swapped clothes and traded places so I could take a turn with her cute friend next. They have no idea we switched on them. Me: No crap? Man, that's pretty sketchy. Was her friend hot too? Host: Not as hot as Schmof-me. She was a shorter and curvier white girl with bleach blonde hair with black tips. She was actually the more fun of the two in the sack, though. I think I managed to hide my shocking realization that the friend was none other than my ex. I finished up my beer just as Schmof-me finally appeared, looking none too worse for the wear, and proceeded to give her the ride home she asked for, after thanking the host for his hospitality. On the drive back, Schmof-me acted coy about the situation, of course, since she was hiding the fact that she had actually been out with my ex. I suppose that was considerate of her, given that I was still being pretty heartbroken over the ex. On the other hand, I could also tell that she was enjoying her little charade, and that she had suckered me into giving her a ride, presumably without ever realizing what had gone on. Of course, I kept my realization about it, in addition to the swap that had been unknowingly pulled on the two girls, to myself. I did eventually get my chance to hook up with Schmof-me another day, but I didn't go for it. Knowing what I knew, she just wasn't quite so smoking hot to me anymore. Story 65. My sister and I are identical, but when we were 12, she had to repeat a year because she was sick. That led to us being in different classrooms and later on, in different high schools. When I was in 10th grade, I had classes in the afternoon. My language and literature teacher asked me to stand up from my desk and berated me in front of the entire class because I had the nerve to walk past her the other day without properly greeting her. She said that it's up to me to skip classes, but she won't tolerate rudeness. I didn't stop her or correct her because I was trying to figure out if I had skipped any classes the other day or not. A colleague who had been in the same class as me since middle school was the one who told her that I had a twin and that she has classes in the morning, which of course she didn't believe. She must have thought he was lying or kidding, or I don't know, that we were friends and he was protecting me, when in truth we barely spoke. Without even telling her, my sister came to my high school when I had the next class of language and literature, because she wanted the key from our apartment as she lost hers. She was waiting for me on the hallway, and the teacher saw her as she got out of the classroom. She paused in her step and had to do a double take to make sure she wasn't having any vision problems. I remember some mumbled apologies happening at the beginning of next class, but seeing her face drop that day made us even. I can tolerate skipped classes, but I will not tolerate rudeness? So she walked by without even saying hi, and that was the reason to be berated? Kind of insane. Story 66. My twin died at birth, but this is a story of a set of twins I went to high school with. Right out of high school, one of the twins joined a volunteer fire department in our town. That twin and I weren't friends at the time. Actually, we pretty much hated each other for no reason. The other twin and I were pretty much best friends, though. After our first year of college, the other twin and I also decided to join the fire department together, but I had to join another department than the first twin because it was far from where I lived, and the twins lived pretty much at the midpoint from both departments. So now we have a set of twins in different departments. Obviously, both departments had a rivalry for some stupid crap that I don't think anyone in either department knows, but they'd often try and recruit each other's members. Anyway, we get a structure fire one day, and me and my friend arrived in the ladder truck. He gets out, and the chief of the other department freaks out. He thought our chief recruited his member, and we had both chiefs just arguing about that on the fire scene. I don't know if our chief knew he was a twin, but instead of saying that we did not recruit your guy or we can talk about this later, they just found a reason to keep yelling at each other at the scene of a fire. The second twin eventually showed up and things made a bit more sense, but you could still feel the tension. No one in our department was really bothered because it's pretty much always like this between our chiefs, who are actually really good friends in real life. Sucks for the homeowner though. Story 67. My dad and his brother are twins, and they used to love pranking people and switching places. Apparently, they used to do it in school all the time to get out of things one of them didn't want to do. So one day, my dad crawled into bed with my mom and started getting frisky, and she said, "Oh," my dad's name. He thought it would be funny to say, "I'm not my dad's name, I'm his brother's name." And then she started freaking out. I just feel like that could have gone south in more than one way. And ever since they told me this story, I've always had this thought in the back of my mind that maybe they did switch places and my uncle is my dad, and vice versa. That's a scary thought to have. And a DNA test wouldn't fix that, would it? Would it? I don't know. Story 68. I'm not a twin, but my best friend and I look a lot alike, to the point where people would ask if we were twins all the time. They would be shocked, and when we said we weren't related in any way, we were in 7th grade. This was my first year in public school, so no one knew who I was besides my best friend and a few others. Well, it was halfway into the year when I was heading back to class from lunch when this random dude stops me and said, "Hey Chelsea," my best friend's name, "would you like to go out with me?" I didn't know what to say. I stopped. I had two choices to make. I could tell him that I wasn't her, but instead, because I've never seen her talking to him nor talk about how she likes him in any way, I said, "No thanks," then walked away. A few years down the road, this guy and I are now friends, and I told him about that moment and was embarrassed. He thought I was Chelsea the whole time. Story 69. My girlfriend's father has an identical twin. We will call them Twin 1 and Twin 2. Twin 1, my girlfriend's father, received a call from Twin 2. Twin 2 explained that he has work the next day, but doesn't want to go because he last minute planned a date with a girl out of town. So he asked my girlfriend's father if he would go into work and pretend to be him. Twin 1 walks into Home Depot, not knowing where to clock in. He looks around and had no choice but to try to sneak the answer out of someone. He said something along the lines to a Home Depot employee, "The time punch machine is gone." The employee gave him a strange look and led him to the time punch machine to prove it was still there. Minutes later, Twin 1 didn't even know where to go to begin working. The boss came over and said, "Twin 2, are you all right?" "Yeah, I'm good. How are you?" "Get to work then, please," said Boss Man. After Twin 1 still wasn't sure where to go, the boss finally realized they weren't the same person due to very minuscule details. "Wait a minute. You aren't Twin 2. Get out of here!" Needless to say, Twin 2 was fired. And so was Twin 1, I guess? Story 70. My dad died in late 2010, and my uncle, my dad's twin brother, who lives abroad, came to town for some weeks, mainly to organize the funeral and to sort out my dad's belongings. One evening, after we went out for dinner, we didn't quite want to go home yet, and I heard that there was a yearly party at the Atelier, and my friend's mom, who was very good friends with my dad. Well, that was apparently not such a good idea. My dad attended these events regularly, so many people there knew him. Many, of course, knew that my dad had passed away. They got very confused, and some cried, some got scared, some got angry. Some others who haven't known about my dad's death came happily towards us, greeting my uncle with my dad's name. That caused even more chaos, and we decided to leave after 2 minutes. Story 71. Not me, but a friend. He and his brother do not look like each other much, but they are both in the army and are the same rank. The office of my friend is on the 1st floor, and the office of his brother is on the 6th floor. One day, the new girl came to me with a baffled look and said that she cannot understand how Sergeant X, my friend, can outrun her and reach his office on the 6th floor so fast. She thought that he is using the emergency stairs and was playing games with her. It took her 4 months to realize that he has a twin brother. One day we were on an assignment in a neighboring city and a very attractive girl was constantly winking at my friend. She finally came to our table, sat next to him and put her hand on his leg. My friend jumped up like he was bitten by a snake or something and yelled, "No!" The girl slapped him, called him a scum, and stormed off. All the people in the cafeteria were looking at us. It turns out that his brother had been on a 6-week-long training there and made a few friendships. Story 72. When a new laundromat opened on our street, my twin sister was the first one to try it. So all the staff there met her, and this being a friendly college neighborhood, I guess they remembered her name. Because when I got regular laundry duty and went there for the first time, they go, "Hi, twin's name." I froze and corrected them. My sister never went there again because laundry was my chore. So imagine 3 months later, she's alone in the dorm and doing her own laundry, and the lady at the laundry starts talking to her really comfortably and knowing details of her life. Yes, I made small talk with this lady, and basically I role-played as my twin sister. Story 73. My twin brother and the entire sophomore Spanish class would go to give basic Spanish lessons to kindergartners and play games. Each student was given a partner. Let's call my brother's partner Dave. Dave was a good kid, I'm told, and he would always give my brother bear hugs when he saw him in the halls. I've struggled with dealing with kids in my life. I've never been good at babysitting and such. One day Dave ran up to me, and I basically rolled out of the way at the last second while he tried to hug me because I didn't know who he was. I know it was mean, but it was a reflex, I swear. Well, what happened after that was Dave ran straight into a wall and got a bloody nose. His teacher thought I was my brother and scolded me for a solid 3 minutes without letting me get a word in. Moral of the story? Don't be a twin. Story 74. I'm an identical twin of 32 years. My twin and I looked the same when we were very young up until about college when we started to realize we could be our own people. My twin got involved in some shady stuff, which sucked, and it led to her often using my name when she got in trouble. I moved away for a while, but I got a letter at my parents' house when I was home for the holidays, saying I had to sign an affidavit about an accident I was in, which could not have been me since I didn't live there at the time. Ultimately, the awkwardness was between my twin and I. She was using my identity to stay out of trouble. She claimed her license was suspended. After that, I made her pay to get a printed report of my license and any charges to assure that this was the only instance. I still, to this day, don't know if she was just giving my name out or had taken my license, so I would have to get a new one. That was the last time it happened, as far as I'm aware. Hey, be grateful you're not a twin. Story 75. This is a story from my twin. We went to the same middle school. Since our parents wanted to keep us together, it being easier to manage. One day I was sick from a cold, if I remember correctly, but my brother went to school. Halfway through the day, he said my English teacher grabbed him in the hallway and pulled him into her classroom and started lecturing him about why I didn't, go to her class. She barely got a few seconds in before my twin realized she was talking about me and corrected her. Since he didn't have that teacher, it was pretty obvious. She was extremely embarrassed and frantically tried to correct herself, offering lollipops she keeps at her desk. To this day, I remember it because to my twin and I, we look really different, but to strangers, we're completely alike. Story 76. This was more funny for us, but perhaps awkward for this teacher. We were both in the same class, we even sat beside each other most of the time, but sometimes with other friends during an Irish. After a few months went by, our parents went in for a parent-teacher meeting. Our parents always split the teachers 50-50 and just asked about both of us. After our mother talked about me for a few minutes, she asked the teacher about my twin. Apparently she didn't realize she was teaching 2 different people for a few months. I mean, she'd call our names out after each other during the roll call and she didn't cop it? In her defense, we had a lot of idiots in our class and I think she was mentally exhausted as soon as the class entered to when it left. Poor woman. We also had a girl who didn't know she had twins in the same year as her until 4th year. She was a bit, Other than that, just the usual seeing each other's friends around and not knowing if they're saying hi to you or not because you don't know them, which is the worst personally because I always feel bad. Story 77. So this one is pretty banal compared to everything else here, but it's one of my favorite memories, and it got me a few new friends, so why the heck not? Sorry for the length, I never caught on the whole brevity of wit thing. My twin sister and I are unabashed anime nerds, and one year we finally saved up enough money to go to a major con on the East Coast. Both she and I were excited to finally meet one of our dearest internet friends, and she was over the moon about a planned meetup with her extensive Twitter circle. She was way more active than I was at the time. Think 200 followers versus 10. So we get there, and hooray, there's our internet pal. She hugs us both, and we go on our nerdy way, exploring and eventually ending the day in our shared hotel room. Fun times. Day 2 rolls around, and my sis is pretty excited about meeting her Twitter pals sometime that afternoon. At some point, she wanders off to stand in line for something while internet pal and I chat off to the side. At this point, I start to feel like something's up, since iPal keeps referencing things that I know are near and dear to sis's heart that I only have a passing interest in, and it briefly occurs to me that she hasn't said my name once. This is where I start thinking, yo, did you get us mixed up? No big deal, it comes with the territory. I start wondering how to set her straight without making things awkward. That's when, like something out of a crap comedy, sis's friends start piling in. I wave at sister, trying to get her attention. The dumb crap waves back. At this point, I just resign myself to having to suffer through awkward small talk with a ton of people I barely know, which sucks. Thankfully, they're all friends with iPal, so I figured I could just fade into the background while they waited on sister. No big deal. Oh wait, did I say awkward small talk? Let me change that to awkward body contact. As our iPal friend of 5+ years, the girl we've wandered the city with for the past 2 days and had endless conversations with, confirms my suspicions by introducing me as my sister to all of these very intimate Twitter friends who all, as it turned out, really liked hugs. Yeah, so I'm sitting here just panicking, and iPal isn't catching on as all these people start getting up in my business and start lavishing me with affection and oh my goshes, while I'm working up an awkward sweat and looking at iPal with panic in my eyes to hopefully clue her into the fact that, oops, while my sister still is MIA. I'm elbow deep in nerd sweat at this point, and we've long since crossed the line where I can just say, wrong sister, but I was not going to be the one to make iPal lose face. Gosh dang it! So I dig in. Time to play dumb. Unfortunately, I have the de-escalation skills of an angry chimpanzee reaching for some little girl's snow cone at the zoo, so it's all I can do is to say some weak crap like, oh, hey, sis talks about you all the time, fake believing that iPal introduced me as, me in the first place. In retrospect, I could have done better. People start fidgeting, side-eyeing one another, and it gets real quiet. iPal is standing there wide-eyed and slack-jawed, making the quintessential, oh, crap, face. Sorry, iPal, it was the best I could do. Long story short, sis flounces right on over on cue and immediately takes over with the, oh my gosh. Everyone cheers, hugs, eyes are averted, and I slowly step to the side to let these weebs yuck it up. Mission accomplished. Kinda. Yeah, things were pretty awkward for a little while between me and iPal. She was super apologetic, and I was like, dude, it comes with the territory. No big deal. But yeah, sorry, iPal. On the bright side, I actually mingled a bit with sister's friends and managed to make a few of my own. So now I know that if we ever meet up again, the hugs at least won't be awkward. Story 78. Okay, so I'm fraternal, and those who know us say we look nothing alike, but those who don't think we are identical even though we have different hair colors. When donating plasma, he must have left just before I got there, and I sat right where he was sitting because one of the workers came out of the office and saw me and yelled, "You're still here? It's been 3 hours." Everyone else had already figured out that we were twins, but none as fun as that one. Also, he parties a lot, and I'm not as much. Up at a music festival, and a lot of girls came up and hugged me and called me my twin while I was walking with my girlfriend. Then up at college, a good friend of mine in my study group was riding in the elevator with my brother, and he had a class right next to mine. She kept asking him about homework, and he didn't really pay attention to her, so she was getting frustrated. Then she gets off the elevator and walks into class and sees me. She asked if there is someone on campus who looks just like me, and I say, well, I have a twin. Story 79. I once dated a girl that I didn't know had a twin. I wish that was one of the first things she told me because she did stuff with her sister's boyfriend, and to get back at her, she took her sister's phone and she was Emily for that day. After dinner, she wanted to go upstairs and watch a movie. The next morning, I woke up with a girl that looked exactly like my girlfriend and another of her arguing. In my half-asleep mind, I was just thinking it was a clone or something like that. When I tried to go back to sleep, my girlfriend racked me and asked, "Just what the F did you think you were doing?" Like, gee, she looks exactly like you. How was I supposed to know when you didn't tell me you had a twin? My girlfriend hated me now, but I was so confused on what the heck I got brought into. Story 80. We aren't identical twins, but looked similar at times. My sister had a fairly new boyfriend at the time, and we went out to the same place together. We both went to the bar together to get a drink. We were still in high school, and she decided to go talk to someone she knew. Her boyfriend at the time came up behind me and hugged me. I knew him, so I thought he was just going to say hello, and instead he started kissing and tasting my ear. I died a little inside because I was so grossed out. I turned around and pushed him away while shouting, "I'm not my sister!" I was so shocked and disgusted I told my sister and our best friend, and my twin was upset at first, but eventually saw how hilarious it was, and it was so funny to me. But the shame I saw, the embarrassment on his face after realizing what he'd done, when I think about it, it still grosses me out, but at least I get a good laugh out of it. Story 81. I'm not even a twin, but my little sister, E, younger by 3 years, and I look ridiculously similar. The only difference is that I have really black hair and hers is light brown. No one really remembers that about us, though. One of her teachers that I had also grown up with but never had as a teacher saw me at Walmart, and we chatted for a minute. I was already being socially awkward, so when she mistook me for my sister, I didn't correct her for some reason. It got weird when she laughed and said, "Hey E, as long as you don't poop everywhere again, I think we're fine." It makes me think something went down between the teacher and my sister that I have no idea about. I never got around to asking what E and what the F had happened to warrant a statement like that, especially if it was so bad it was funny now, 15 years later. Story 82. This girl started messaging me on Facebook Messenger out of the blue. I knew her prior in high school but haven't talked to her in around 4 to 5 years. She was asking when I was going to take her out and was extremely confused because, as mentioned, I haven't talked to her in years, but she was very cute. She told me something about sending her pictures a few days ago, and she showed me some that were sent to her. One was my brother's car. I then figured out my brother asked her out and she was really trying to talk to him instead of me. Of course, I wanted to take advantage of the situation and take her out, but I wouldn't feel right about it. Plus, she wanted to go to a bar. I'm not a huge drinker or anything, so after a bit I told her what I thought was going on and forwarded her to my brother. There's upsides also to being a twin. He's taken my college reading and math placement tests for me. Story 83. My brother and I swapped classes all through junior and high school. We look exactly alike, and this was an amazing opportunity that neither one of us was going to pass up. We would meet in the bathroom during class, swap sweatshirts, and then go to each other's classes. Many of the students knew, but we never had the teacher catch on. That all changed the day my brother had a sub in his science class, but I was totally out of control. I thought, why not? I'm in his class with the substitute teacher. Let's have some fun today. I'd brought a frog with me because in California in the wintertime when it rains they are everywhere, and then I put one into her purse. I could go on and on about what I did, but the real funny was when the science teacher read the substitute report about the brother's actions. Let's just say he got a couple of days in school suspension and he was not happy with me at all. I could write a book about the stories with my twin brother, and we were so bad. My poor mother. Story 84. I don't have a twin, but about 5 years ago I was at a bar, and some random person came up to me and thought I was Scott from high school, and talking about how she hadn't seen me in forever. Confused, I told her that wasn't my name, and she kept getting more and more angry, thinking I was effing with her. To the point I pulled out my driver's license just to prove my real name. Her jaw dropped. Then she showed me his profile picture on Facebook and my jaw dropped. I thought I was looking at the picture of myself. He went to high school 10 miles away from me and I actually got mistaken for him 2 to 3 times after that. Very weird. Story 85. Oh, for once I have a story. I'm an identical twin, and in high school there have been quite a few mix-ups between me and my sister. Once we had a fire drill in school, and as usual we all went outside. I was at school on my own and my sister was absent due to getting sick. So her Spanish teacher, which was her 3rd period class, saw me and thought I was her and ditching her class. The next day after, my sister came back to school and her teacher made fun of her in front of the entire class, saying how she caught her ditching and that she caught her doing it with her own eyes. My sister tried to explain that it was me, but neither her teacher or classmates believed that she had a twin, so she was furious. And to be honest, so was I. The next day I went with my sister to see her teacher early and show evidence to her face that we were twins. I wanted her to apologize, but she just locked us out of her classroom. I went to the principal instead. Now I tell everyone that I was a twin, and so does my sister. Story 86. My twin and I own a business together, have a lot of the same friends, and share most of the same hobbies on top of looking alike, so having people come up to us thinking we are the other twin is a frequent occurrence. Usually when someone comes up to me I don't recognize, I will hurry and inform them I'm not my brother before the conversation goes too long. Until I didn't recognize someone I should have, and it made it really awkward when I cut them off to tell them they probably think I'm my brother, and called me out knowing who I am. I still don't know who that person was. Now, I usually just hold the conversation for as long as it was possible to know I have no connection to the person before telling them, which can be awkward at times as well. It's the cross I bear in this life. Story 87. I used to work at a restaurant as a busboy, and no one knew I had a twin brother. That day, him and I were supposed to go to my mom's together for her birthday, so he swung by to pick me up. Being the brilliant mind that he is, he decided to come into the restaurant and sit at the bar. My manager asked him what he was doing out of uniform and that he still had 15 minutes on the clock and to please get back to work. He smugly smiled as I came out from the back to clear some tables. I just rolled my eyes because of all the smugness he was giving off at the moment. Everyone did a double take and were very, very confused for the next 15 minutes. Manager was really sorry and gave him a slice of peanut butter pie while he waited. We both laughed afterwards though. It was fun. I miss him a lot. Story 88. Not me. I dated, for a very short time, a girl who had an identical twin, aka Twin A. They always wore the same clothes, had the same haircut, put on makeup the same, even down to having matching tiny diamond stud earrings. They even had very similar names. The only difference was the one that I dated had a tendency of tucking her hair behind her right ear, and the other did it on the left. They lived together in the same house and worked at the same restaurant on the same shifts. After a couple of dates, I asked her to go see a movie with me with dinner afterwards. The first thing that struck me was that she insisted on paying her own way into the movie and paying for her own meal. Okay, whatever, that's just how she rolled sometimes, not out of the norm. As the night wound down and I pulled into the driveway, I figured now was as good a time as any to try for a goodnight kiss. The night had gone really well, I thought. Her, no, I'm sorry, but I'm not Twin A. Me, what? Her, Twin A was sick and was too embarrassed to tell you, so we switched for the night. I hope you're not mad. Me, no, I'm not mad, just a bit confused. That was pretty much it. Twin A and I laughed about it later. We mutually broke it off several weeks after for unconnected reasons. Story 89. I'm a fraternal twin, but identical twins, what would you say the benefit are to being identical? The main benefit of being fraternal is that people won't ever confuse us, and are probably more likely to assume we are distinct and do not have similar personalities. Although some people think we could be brothers, cousins, or do not look anything alike at all. We also have polar opposite personalities yet hang out often and share similar interests. I've always felt being identical would be fun to mess with people, but after a while it would lose its novelty and become more of a nuisance than anything. What do you think? Story 90. They aren't twins, but my dad and my uncle look and sound very similar. They both worked at the same place, so people would have conversations with one and think they were talking to the other. They got tired of correcting everyone, so they would just have the conversation, then update the other one on what happened. They would tell the other one something like, today a guy in a gray suit with a blue tie about 5'6", 150 pounds, told you he needs a brief for his case for tomorrow. You said you would be able to do it, but no promises. That way, the correct person would see the guy they had a conversation with the next day and could just resume the conversation as if it had been them. Also, my brother-in-law used to be an identical twin until he lost his leg in an accident. When he is wearing long pants and not walking, you can't tell the difference between him and his brother. Anyway, at his wedding, they spent 15 minutes taking pictures of his brother before the head photographer realized they were taking pictures of the wrong guy and goes, that's not the groom. At which point, everyone who was just standing around taking pictures realizes what happened and the whole place cracks up. Story 91. I got a couple good stories with my best friends, so they aren't actually twins, but they look extremely similar. Similar height, hair, face, etc. They went to an anime convention as Spy vs. Spy and swapped costumes halfway through the day. A friend comes up and grabs one's butt, thinking it's the other. Second story is more recent. I was roommates with the older brother in college. He's moving back into the apartment for the school year, so his dad takes us grocery shopping because we have no car. There isn't enough room for everyone, so mom and brother just stay behind and just chill in the apartment. I forget that I had invited our gay friend over. They have a crush on the roommate's brother. They come to the house and knock on the door. They see the younger brother open the blinds. They open the door and yell, "Daddy!" at the wrong brother, and then to their horror, see the mom on the couch. We didn't get back for another 30 minutes. Gay friend sat on the couch with the mom and awkwardly talked about mac and cheese and secretly wished to die. Story 92. Dead parakeets. Had two female friends who were identical, including their hairstyle. One, call her Sarah, had a couple times in the past taken care of 3 parakeets owned by an elderly woman. Call her Rhonda. Rhonda told Sarah she might be going on a 14-day cruise starting on Monday, but was not sure yet. But if so, would Sarah use the hidden key and feed and water the parakeets as she had before? Sarah told her, sure, just let me know. Mindy, Sarah's twin, who is a conceited, self-centered brat, comes to town and is picking out apples from a roadside stand. A car pulls up with Rhonda in the passenger seat. She says, as Mindy recalls, "I'm going on the trip. I leave Monday, back on the 22nd. Please attend to the squawkers." Rhonda then blew a kiss and they drove off. Mindy assumed the lady, who has blue hair that is falling out and is 84 years old, was totally bonkers and carried on with the shopping. About 6 days later, Rhonda texts Sarah and asks, "How's everything going?" Sarah responded, "All is well, can't complain. You?" Rhonda responded, "I'm going to play a little bingo tonight, wish me luck." Sarah replied, "Knock 'em dead." The 22nd rolls around. 3 dead parakeets lie in the cage. One of them had been viciously attacked. Large patches of feathers had been ripped off and the bird had tears and puncture wounds all over its face and body. Story 93. Not a twin, but my sister, 23, and I, 20, look similar enough where people often ask if we're twins. We go to the same college, and my sister's friends would see me around and think it was my sister, and tell her they saw her doing things she definitely wasn't doing. We don't really see why we keep getting mixed up, considering I tend to dye my hair bright colors like green and red, and she doesn't. Also, I always wear glasses and she always wears contacts. There's another girl who's in the same sorority as me that looks even less similar to me than my sister, but other people in the sorority tend to get us mixed up all the time. I guess we have a similar face shape and smile the same, but she's the president of said sorority and I have never held any leadership roles. So when other officers get us mixed up and start talking to me about important business, I'm usually really confused. One semester, a rush candidate didn't even know I existed until the very end, and thought I was the girl the whole time. She had even driven me home a few weeks prior and just thought I was Miss President. Story 94. I'm an identical twin, but my sister goes to a different university than me. We do have some mutual friends from school, though. We were both invited to a birthday gathering at a club, but I couldn't go because I was sick and on antibiotics. My sister went with a group of our girlfriends, and the guy I was seeing at the time was also invited, so he was there too. Mind you, he knew I had a sister, but he hadn't gotten a chance to meet her yet. Him and I weren't boyfriend and girlfriend per se, but there was a sense of commitment there. Anyways, during the party, my sister gets super drunk and ends up making out with 3 different guys that she doesn't know. My boy, thinking it was me, got super upset and stopped talking to me, even after multiple people told him I had an identical twin. Story 95. I'm not a twin, but a friend of mine who I worked with was a twin, and he and his brother dated identical twins. One day, my friend comes into our workplace on his day off, it was a retail store, to pick up some bits, staff uniform, etc. I assume I walk right up to him and give him a little punch on the shoulder. I'm like, "Whoa, you're trying to act all cool with your girl and not introduce her to the gang?" He looks at me weird and walks off. I'm quite insulted at this point as we're pretty close and obviously he's shown me pictures of his girl, so why is he acting like this? Next day I see my friend in the lunchroom. He's like, "Yo!" I'm thinking, what the heck, don't act all cool now when you were just acting up in front of your girl yesterday. He's obviously confused. You guessed it, it was his twin with his identical girlfriend. Who does that? You'd think he'd mention he was a twin, but really, why should he? Till this day, his twin doesn't like me, and I don't even know his name. Story 96. I'm not one of the twins, but one weekend at the family cabin, some new friends show up with my girlfriend's sister. 2 guys who were twins and a girl who were just meeting for the first time. As the evening progressed around the campfire, my girlfriend and I decided to hit the hay and went up to our bedroom. That is when we find twin A sitting outside the door while twin B and the girl were in the room. We knocked on the door and asked if we could have our room back, and they came out half-dressed and just thought it was weird, being as it was so early, like 9 p.m., and the fact one was outside the door listening to what they were doing in there. We proceeded to get settled into the room, and I noticed that they left a huge puddle of something and freaked out at the lack of cleanup or respect for the place, not asking what bedroom was theirs. So I head out to the campfire to tell my girlfriend's sister about what their friends did while one of the twins is now sitting by her side. My stupid idiot self thinking because the girl wasn't around, it was the twin that was outside the door. Nope, it was the twin who had just left me that puddle in the room. And as I am telling the sister about how upset I am that the twin just smiled and let me think it was the other twin after I said it was weird for him listening outside the door. I'm sure I made it super awkward for them, especially with me confusing the 2 twins for each other, because we never saw them back again. Story 97. I'm not even a twin, but I've had people just start talking to me thinking I'm my brother pretty frequently, even though we're 4 years apart. Not particularly awkward, but the most amusing was when I was playing volleyball and someone set me back row and was shouting my brother's name. But since there were like 4 other people there that night with my brother's name and at the level of play back row sets aren't common, and most sets are poorly placed anyway, I assumed it was for someone else and let it drop. The woman who set me started yelling at me until she realized I was not, in fact, my brother. We had a good laugh afterwards. Story 98. I'm not an identical twin, but I am fraternal, and we have very much alike similarities where people can't tell us apart sometimes. We both worked at McDonald's, and she worked the back booth register, and I worked the front drive-through register. This lady came through and was fascinated by how fast I got to the front drive-through window. Then I never told my coworkers I have a twin, and they will see her come in or through the drive-through, and then come to the back to see me washing dishes, and be like, "How did you change so fast?" And I would just remember being really confused. What are you talking about? Then I would look at the time, and it was almost time for my shift to end, and she was just going to be picking me up from work since we had to share the car. Their minds were so blown by the fact I had a twin, it wasn't really awkward, just funny. Story 99. Not the most awkward, but the most random was 4 years ago. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and went to see a play in Milwaukee, 1.5 hours away, with my wife, and then later to a Cuban restaurant downtown, maybe a mile away. This girl approaches me and asks me if I have a twin brother. Apparently she kind of knew my identical twin and his wife, who's also a twin by the way, from when they were all in grad school in the Chicago area. And when she saw me with my wife at the theater, she thought I was my brother cheating on his wife. She mostly figured it out after some Facebook stalking during intermission. Apparently, she had also seen me a few months before at a career fair in Madison and had been surprised to see who she thought was my twin there. And she had gone to college with my sister-in-law's brother-in-law. So the same girl knew my twin brother's wife's twin sister's husband from her time in Madison, then met my twin brother and his wife in Chicagoland, and then ran into me in Madison and in 2 different places in Milwaukee, despite living over an hour away from both Madison and Milwaukee. That was a friggin' mouthful of relative commentary. Sister-in-law's brother-in-law with the same girl that the twin brother's wife's twin sister's husbands from her time in Madison met with twin brother. Holy smokes! I honestly can't follow the story anymore, but hopefully it made sense. Story 100. For some background, my sister and I are super close, but very different people with very separate lives. This was about 3 years ago. So my boyfriend is in a motorcycle club and we're all pretty tight. My twin at the time was in a sorority at a college about 40 minutes away. I would visit but not super often, and she never actually lived in the sorority house. And honestly, being an identical twin doesn't come up in conversation as much as you would think. Anyways, I was bar hopping with some friends and I got absolutely smashed and lost my friends. Ended up running into my boyfriend club, he was home sleeping, and they figured out pretty quick I was lost and effed up, so they took me with them when they left the bar. There's a taco place in the small city we live in that is super popular and open until 3 a.m. We made a stop there to get food and water before they brought me home. Now it's just me and a group of huge, mixed-raced, scary-looking bikers. I make my way to the bathroom while everybody else went to grab a table. I do run into people who think I'm my sister a lot because she is the more social of the two of us, and sometimes if I think it's gonna be a hi and bye, I'll just pretend I'm her. So this yuppie chick runs up to me and is like, "OMG, hey," insert what's her name, "what's up?" I'm really drunk, so I just give a hey and try to move on, but it doesn't stop there. I don't remember what we talked about, but in my current state, I decided to continue to pretend to be my sister. Well, this was a bad idea because the conversation quickly turned to topics I knew nothing about. I had to give up and tell this chick I'm Hannah's twin, and with legit no explanation about why I didn't just say that in the first place. I scurried off to the table of big black bikers, not one of our finer moments, and I still cringe pretty hard about that one.